everyone. This is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, March 29th of 2026. Now, I have a really great message for you this week, and it's taken me a couple of tries to actually get my thoughts out. So I'm hoping this third time is a charm. I actually recorded a whole thing, and then I was like, that doesn't feel right. Then I recorded another whole thing. And then I'm like, it still doesn't come across like I want. So this is it. I'm going to share what I have to share. And the interesting thing is I think this message has the potential to trigger a few people. And I don't mean that in a really negative way. I just mean that in a way that what I find is if I lean on myself, if I realize that I am the one I've been waiting for, and I share that like no one's coming to save me, um, it triggers people who believe that there is someone that will save them. And that is not my intention because we all have our own journey. And this is just such an interesting place to be with these realizations, these beautiful things that have just dropped in a remembering kind of a way. So I'm just going to share, and third time's a charm. So what actually triggered this whole week of journaling is a couple of weeks ago, I had an amazing conversation with a very, very dear friend who's gone through some really hard things that are similar to some of the hard things I've gone through recently in the last couple of years. And we all are, none of us are unique in the hard things. Every single one of us can say, I have this hard thing that happened. I'm in this hard thing right now. And it's a really interesting thing because we think that some of these experiences we have are unique. Now, some of the nuances or the details might be unique, but we all have really hard stuff. In fact, there's a really great book called Peaks and Valleys that is sometimes our life is in a deep valley and we're not sure how we're going to get out of it, and how we respond and how we react and what we do in the valley determines not just our next peak, but how high is our next peak. One of my favorite books. So that's kind of the human experience. But what this conversation with my friend, one of the very first things he said as we were just, chatting, he said, well, you start to realize pretty quickly that life is a solo act. And that's the whole thing. Like what my life, how it happens, how it runs through, how I respond to it. It's all my responsibility, but I am the one that I've been waiting for. And this is a part of a deep remembering and a deep realization that I'm living my life not only to serve others and have compassion and empathy and all of that stuff, because I believe that that's a part of this experience, but it's a solo act. And I'm just going to go through my journaling and share with you and expand on some of these thoughts. And then I actually came up with some really good journaling questions for you too. So one of the clearest realizations that I've had at the deepest level is that this has always been a solo act. That's what I wrote at the very beginning of the week. And then I wrote, not in a lonely way, not in a bitter or resigned way, but in a way that feels clean and honest. When I look back at the hardest things, the hardest moments, the ones that just stripped everything down, and the ones where there were no pretending, no distractions, and no easy way out, I can see something very clearly. Something, if you think about where it takes you down to the bare bones of your emotions, your spirituality, your relationships, your whatever it is that strips you down to the barest part of it all, I was the one who showed up. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get support from other people and that you can't support other people during the hard times, because that's an absolutely critical piece of the puzzle. But at the bare bones of you, and I'm speaking about myself, me in a puddle of my tears, my deepest, darkest moments, I'm the one who showed up. I'm the one who either stayed in a victim mentality or picked myself up and moved myself into the next thing. And then I did the next thing, and then I did the next thing. And that's how it always is. So I didn't show up perfectly, and sometimes it wasn't graceful, but I showed up. Okay? When things hurt, when things didn't make sense, when I felt uncertain or shaken or completely untethered, I was still here. and I was thinking my way through it. And then I wrote, or overthinking, which I tend to do. And I think that that's one of the modern issues that a lot of us have. We take something that's happening and then we throw our assumptions on it and we overthink and we overthink. And that has been me most of my life, especially as these really hard things have come up. So I've been feeling it, enduring it, finding some way, slowly and stubbornly, to move ahead and get through it. Okay, and I'm sure many people can relate with that, right? Of course, other people are there too. So I'm talking about family, friends, people in our tribe that we gather up around us, okay? Some have offered love, some have offered words, some have just stood by and just have been there. And I think that's kind of a quiet support. You think about when you lose somebody in your life, a close family member who's maybe young. I've shared this before, but in 2021, it's been almost 5 years, I lost two young nephews. One to suicide, he was 19, and one to a motorcycle accident. And this was my oldest nephew, my very first nephew, and he was 44. He was my oldest sister's oldest son. And it's always really, really hard to know how to be there to support people. I'm talking about my brother and my sister when they lost their children. And sometimes the best thing you can do is to be there, be strong, and just show up for them. Okay, so I'm really not talking about the ways we support each other. But at the end of the day, my sister and my brother, um, they had to show up, pull themselves up by the bootstraps, and go through their steps. And it's a tiny bit of a lonely journey through some of these really, really hard things, because while others will show up for you, it's they can't show up for you the way you show up for yourself, if that makes sense. So um, all these things, some offered love, words, stood by quietly, and I do know that I'm not blind to it, and I'm grateful for it, because during all the hard things that have happened in my life, I always have people show up. And I will say there's been moments during all of that where it's like I've thought, why aren't people showing up more for me? And I really did think, well, someone's going to come and help make this easier. They're going to take away the pain of this really hard thing. Um, you know, it's really interesting. And then I realized this I sat with that for just a second, and then this big thing. Everyone has their own lives. They have their own hardships, and at the end of the day, they all have their own emotional bandwidth. Everyone is on their own journey. Everyone. And while we can be there, this is where we get to show up for ourselves. But we also need to realize that, everyone has their own hard things. And I might show up with a hard thing and expect other people to think that mine's the hardest thing happening in the whole wide world right now, or in our family right now. Why aren't other people checking in with me? I've had those thoughts before, many times, many times. So I realized everyone has their own lives, their own hardships and emotional bandwidth, and they all have their own stories and their overthinking and all their things they're doing. It's all, and what the thing is, I wrote here, it's all happening in real time. So it's all happening as we're walking through this matrix, this simulation, this game. And then, when I put that layer on it, when I put that bit of detail to it, it actually lightens the whole mood for me. No matter what hard thing is happening, I remind myself, oh, this is just a game. And I'm here to have fun, and I'm here to experience it. And the hard things, you can make them as hard as you decide to make them, or you can get through them. You can add a layer of humor where it's possible, and all the things. So it's all happening in real time. Everyone. Let's see, they are all going through the things I can't see. And this is something I have to really remind myself. There's a lot of things that I go through that other people can't see. I put on the face, I put on the mask. These last few years, I would say, especially since COVID, and then the last couple of years with the whole government thing I went through, and some other really heavy personal things I've been through, I come on every single Sunday and I put out a message of love, and it's not like I'm faking things, but it's what I wrote here is there everyone is carrying things that I can't see. And that's the same. There's a lot of things that I carry that only the people that are in my very close circle can see or I share with. And sometimes there's a lot of things I just keep to myself. And I think that comes from getting older and getting wiser. That is my own perspective. Because I don't need to share every drama, every detail, every little bit I'm overthinking. I don't need to share all that. I can if I want to, and I have in the past. So, what I'm realizing, people are trying to navigate their own fears, their own responsibilities, and their own distractions and limitations. Because of that, um, there are important moments where people simply can't show up in the way that I would hope or need that they could. Okay, they've got their own emotional bandwidth, and they've got their own things they're dealing with. It's I've had a really I have a lot of sisters I'm so grateful for, and I've got some very dear friends. But I have one sister who is almost 20 years younger than me. She lives near me. She has two daughters that are the same ages as my grandchildren, and we are really super, super close. And I she never watches my stuff, which is fine. Most of my family doesn't. But I have to just tell you, this sister has really stepped up for me. She has been in my physical space, up in my business, checking in with me on a regular basis. And it's, and she's going through her own really hard stuff. And what it has made me more aware of, as I've had my own sometimes pity party, is that she'll share something and I'll realize, oh, this is a big, heavy thing for her. And she is going through a lot too. And it makes me become a better sister, listener, friend for her, an understanding, and actually providing some emotional bandwidth for her, because it's not all about me. Now, it's my job to show up for myself, but it's also not all about me. And it gives me a lot of perspective and a lot of grace and gratitude that I can. There's always something that shifts when you fill other people's cups up, and it's not all about you. Okay. Um, so then let's see. The truth of people not showing up for used to feel disappointing to me. And it's not because I'm not worthy of it, but it's because we're all just human. Okay. Um, the truth used to feel disappointing and deeply lonely. I found myself feeling like a victim sometimes, if I'm honest. I think that's pretty common. But now it feels crystal clear, like it's more clarifying for me. It's it gets just to you get to dip into that for a second and then dip right out once you realize it. It's not saying I'm gonna from this moment on I'm never gonna feel like I'm here all by myself and no one's paying attention to me. It's a journey, right? So then I wrote this. When I look at my own experiences, when things have been intense, uncertain, or overwhelming, I can see a lot more clear. I can, excuse me, I am the one that stayed present through all of it. What I realize is I never stayed down. I never stayed in a pity party. Okay. I was the one who stayed present with all of it, and I was the one who carried it through. So this is something I think it's really important that we give ourselves some credit for what we can endure. And also the whole purpose of this game, right? And it's always interesting because my whole perspective is we're here to play, we're here to remember who we are. And I sometimes it drops into me, this whole I'm here to grow, I'm here to learn lessons, I'm here to break karma. And that all might be fine and true. But at the end of the day, just as I'm speaking this out loud, I think, you know what? Really, I'm here to remember who I am, and I'm already perfect. And I know that this sentence alone can trigger people because I get emails sometimes from people that the things I say and I don't give credit to, this is going to trigger people because it always does. If I don't give credit to something like, Christ or Jesus coming to save me and I'm not worthy because I have to depend on that, you know, I it's surprising the people that judge my perspective. And what I say, if this is something that you judge, I'm not for you. I'm just living my own experience and having my own journey and epiphanies, and everyone has their own thing. But I believe that we're here to remember who we are and then escape the matrix, escape out of all the layers of heaven and hell and you know, all the dimensions. And you know, there's things that have really settled into me because of my hours of meditation, my hours of thought. And then of course I drop into this crazy human experience on a daily basis, and all the hard stuff comes at me, just like it does for the rest of everyone. So it's just a great reminder. So I was the one who stayed present. I was the one who carried it through. Now I know that I've earned the strength. I'm the one who's earned this strength. No one gave it to me, and it wasn't by accident. Okay. And this is where I'm like, I am so grateful for the decades that I've lived. But would I have loved to have this epiphany and this learning, this knowing when I was 20? 100%. That's why it's kind of like, okay, I might consider coming back into this reality, reincarnating, if I could be completely aware and completely, my mind wasn't wiped. I don't want to come back and have everything taken away from me. I would like to keep and maintain all the stuff I learned. So then I wrote, no one gave it to me and it wasn't by accident. I earned it. Okay. By living, choosing, enduring, learning, rebuilding, and continuing when it would have been easier just to shut down or walk away. You know, sometimes we do have to walk away from situations, but I'm not talking about that kind of walking away. Okay. I'm talking about not giving up. Okay. It feels steady and grounding, and it's all me. So it feels very steady and very grounding at this point. I realize that I can meet whatever comes. You know, that is so great. And it's every moment, every choice, and every season. I can just meet whatever comes. And this is a very, very empowering place to be. And I'm not saying I'm not going to slip up and have a pity party again. I probably will. You know, that's kind of what it is. So here's what I realized. I trust myself in a way that I couldn't have when I was younger. Um, I was still looking out when I was younger. I was still looking out, hoping someone else might have all the answers, right? The reassurance, the clarity, all of that. Now the center of gravity has shifted, and it's shifted to me. Okay, and it's here, and it's me. That doesn't mean life will all of a sudden become easy. That's what it doesn't mean all of a sudden it's going to become easy. But I will tell you, it does feel like it can become much lighter and we can have a lot more fun. I think we're supposed to laugh and have joy and, you know, experience all the feels and the stuff and the emotions. And I don't think it's all supposed to be fear and sadness and all of the loosh, you know, the gathering of all of our lower emotions that feeds the machine, right? Um, so it doesn't mean all of a sudden life will become easy. Uh, it doesn't mean I'm not going to keep feeling things deeply, because I do, and I will. That's part of the experience. It doesn't mean I wouldn't welcome more presence, more care, and more consistent reaching in from others. Okay, because of course I would, all the time. I want that all the time. It does remind me to be all of those things for the people that I love and the people I care about. But I no longer confuse what I would like, that I need. But I no longer confuse that with something I need in order to be okay. Okay, because I already know when it comes down to it, when it gets quiet and it's just me standing in the middle of my life, I don't disappear or shrink. I might cry a little, but I don't disappear. I don't disappear anymore. I wish I could disappear or think, when is it going to get easier? When is, you know, there's never going to, it's never going to be perfect, you know? I do think that there is a split. I think there is still, I've been talking about this for a long time. I think there's a timeline split. There's a split happening. And I already can feel there's a lot of people who are vibrating in a different frequency, and they're living life on these systems that I have opted out a long time ago, and other systems that, like the medical system, the pharmaceutical industry, the processed food, the junk food, the fast food. Those are systems I haven't taken part of. A pharmaceutical, never. Fast food, probably 30 years. There's no judgment. People can do whatever their journey is to do here. I opted out of religion, my childhood religion, about 30 years ago as well. And again, no judgment. If people, this is the journey, this is their path. And here's something that again might trigger people, but it's like there are these especially religious truths that people have, and they hold them so dearly, and they know to the core of who they are that this is true. And I would say this about the beliefs that I have. But the interesting thing is this: if that is what they believe to the core of who they are, then that is true for them. It doesn't make my truth any less true for me. And that is such a fascinating thing to let land in you, right? So what I realize is this: when it all comes down to it, I don't shrink or disappear. I might cry a little, but I rise to meet it. This is a relationship that I've built with myself over decades, and years and years. Okay, I didn't set out to build it. I didn't set out to consciously go, all right, I'm going to just count on me and only me. I didn't consciously do that. It just happened over all the years living this life, all the study I've done, all the work I've done. I had a session about a month and a half ago with this local girl. She's just a few years younger than me. She's a medium. Super fun to do these things. I really love this. And she was just referred to me by a good friend, and I thought it would be fun. I was, this is some of the kind of stuff where I'm hoping that someone will be able to tell me what's going on and how long it's going to last, and what are some messages from the other side for people. And I've always really loved this kind of stuff. But what happened is my maternal grandfather came in, so my mom's dad, and I was not close to him. As far as, he lived in another state when I was growing up, and I probably met him only 5 or 6 times in my entire life. I didn't have any bad memories of him. I just didn't have hardly any memories of him. But when I went into this session, she tuned in. It was in person because it was a person here in Salt Lake where I live. And she tuned in and she said, "Oh, your grandfather's here." And I thought, "Oh, okay, which one?" Because both of my grandfathers had long passed on. And I wasn't super close with either of them, but I did live a little closer to my dad's dad. But I also wasn't super close to him either. But my mom's dad came in, and she said, "Oh, he just wants to say thank you because you are the only one in his posterity who has been doing the work." Because for years I did a lot of Reiki generational clearing. I cleared generations of trauma and stuff, on my mom's side especially, and maybe that's why he came in. It was really, really cool. So not quite sure why I brought that up, but so this is a relationship I've built with myself over time. I didn't set out to build it consciously, but now it's here, and it's solid, and it's real. Okay, so what I realize is this: every time I stayed, every time excuse me, every time I faced something, instead of avoiding it. Okay, so think about that. We like to avoid things. It's like people who avoid their bills. And of course, I have never done that, but I know people who are like, "I'm going to set these bills over here. If I don't even open the envelopes, then they don't exist." Okay, so every time you face something, instead of avoid it, every time you pick yourself up when no one's watching, that's the most important piece. Every time you pick yourself up when no one's watching, what I realized is I was building trust with myself. Okay, I realize that now. I didn't realize it then. Okay, and I didn't realize it at the time, but now I feel it, and it's strong. It's not hard, and it's grounded, but it's not closed. Okay, I don't depend on everything going right, and that's probably the beautiful thing. I don't depend on everything going perfectly now, because there is no perfect. It's all just an imperfect balance. But I will tell you, the timeline I want to be on, where I really feel like that's the road I'm walking, is the new earth, the 5th dimension. This is a higher reality where the choices I make, it's always about the choices we make a difference in the experiences I have. Okay, so here's something too. There's something else to it, something that almost feels sacred. And then I wrote this, it's a quiet kind of magic. It feels magical. I think we are powerful beings. We don't give ourselves enough credit. There is, think about quantum entanglement, and you think about, the simple fact if you think about somebody, and then they text you, that is that we are powerful beyond measure. Just need to get out of our own way and realize it. This is part of remembering who we are. So it's a quiet kind of magic. And what I wrote here is I feel like I'm accompanied deeply from within. Okay. I'm no longer searching for myself outside in the world. I'm not looking for myself out there. I'm not looking for it in the workplace, in my friendship circle. I'm not looking for anyone to validate me. That's just such an empowering place to be. Um, I'm no longer searching for myself out in the world, but living from a place of where I already am. And it feels like it's enough because it's more than enough. And then what I wrote at the end, it feels like freedom. It feels, that's always been something that's been really important to me. In fact, I've shared the last couple of weeks. I've been super bothered about this whole having to sign up for Medicare thing. And I had to get out of my own way. I had to really go because I don't, first of all, like the government tell me what I have to do. And I realized I don't have to do it. Like I actually ask the question of the agent who's been handling our health insurance for myself and my team at Barlow Herbal. We've been doing health insurance for a long time, and I said, well, what do you mean I have to sign up? I said, is the government going to come and put me in jail if I don't? And she laughed. She's like, no. So I finally made the decision, okay, this is just the smartest thing and I need to get out of my way. And I'm living in a game. This is part of playing the game. And I talked to a couple people who are a little bit older than me, who already it's like, okay, Jane, like if you really know that there's a piece of my soul and my human avatar here that values freedom at the highest level, someone else telling me what to do. I think that's why I'm such an entrepreneur. I love having my own business, and I have most of my adult life. I've worked for myself, and I'm a good employee too. I can follow directions, and I can be on time, and I can show up. Um, but I'm a person who I would rather work 80 hours a week than 40 hours a week. Someone telling me when to clock in, and that's just me. That's just my personality. So to me, it feels like freedom. Okay, this solo act. No one's coming to save me. I'm the one. I am the one I've been waiting for. Okay. So here are some really short, powerful journaling questions that you could ask yourself this week. Okay. So where am I choosing comfort over truth and calling it circumstance? What am I blaming others for that is actually my responsibility to face? If my current life is a reflection of my choices, what does that say about me? That's a good one. Where am I lying to myself to avoid stepping into my next level? We are the ones we're waiting for. We are the ones responsible for ourselves. What am I afraid would happen if I fully stepped into my power? What is your biggest fear around that? What are you afraid of? We get ourselves stuck because we have this unreasonable fear of the worst case scenario, but that's been programmed into us. Like, ditch those freaking programs. That is so programmed into us. Okay, so what am I afraid would happen if I fully stepped into my power? What are you afraid of? Like, ask yourself that. Like, journal it. Like, I've done that so many times. What's the worst that could happen if I do this? And because I do love starting a business and working for myself and creating things, and I've done some really big, bold things, even just publishing my book. That was a very expensive endeavor, but there were so many reasons not to do it, but what was I afraid of? And it was brilliant. It was so fun. Okay, so where am I still playing small so I don't outgrow the people around me? This is a very important question. Where are you still playing small so that you don't outgrow the people around you? This one is startling sometimes, um, because we don't like to be alone. But what you would do is you would actually open up you would make space, energetic space for the people that you're like. I've come to think that we're not, for most of us, there's not a soulmate for, like, we all think, oh, there's a soulmate. There's one soulmate. And there might be, there probably is for many, many people. But what I really think it is more is a soul tribe. I think, the souls and the consciousness and these divine sparks of pure love and light that we are, that really makes us who we are. I think out there playing in the ether and the universe, before we decided to come down, we're all like, let's find each other and let's play and support each other. I really believe, okay? So where am I still playing small so I don't outgrow the people around me? That's a challenge, because you might need to outgrow those people so you can ascend, so you can have more fun, so you can have less angst, so you can stop playing small. That one is obviously very important to me. What pain am I recycling because it's more familiar than change? That one is really good, because we let these stories of victimhood start to define who we are. They become our identity. And it might even be a disease. I've seen this so many times in people. Where would you be if your body healed? If your body didn't have this disease or this ailment or this pain, who would you be if you didn't have that identifying thing? That is, sometimes those are the things that keep us stuck. So what pain am I recycling because it's more familiar than change? We think we want to be pain-free, but pain is familiar. It's certainty. Okay? If I stripped away every excuse, what would be left undone, and why haven't I done it? Where am I outsourcing my worth, my direction, and my identity? Where am I outsourcing it? Where are you outsourcing your worth, your direction, your identity? And then this last one. If I had to take full ownership of my life with no exceptions, what would I stop tolerating immediately? That's a good question, right? If you had to take full ownership of your life, no exceptions, what would you stop tolerating immediately? That's the perfect place to end it. So next Sunday when I talk to you will be Easter, and it will be the first Sunday in April. So I hope you have a brilliant last couple of days of March of 2026, and we will see you next time.